Hello and welcome back to Animated Banners with CSS. So far we've gotten our background image in place, we've gotten our corners rounded, but all of our images and the rest of our content is just kind of scattered throughout the rest of our page. In this lesson we want to start pulling all of that together and aligning everything and sizing everything where it needs to be. Now we have very specific places where we want these items to end up within our banner. So we need to use absolute positioning in order to get them there. We want to be able to tell them exactly where in terms of pixels, or exactly how far I should say, our banner, for example, our heading text, how far that's going to be from the top of the banner and from the left side of the banner. We want to be able to specify where exactly our tree image or graphic is going to be, where exactly our winter sale text is going to end up. So we need to use absolute positioning to do that. But if we were to give these elements absolute positioning, by default, that positioning would be relative to the browser as a whole. So if we gave one of these items, such as this text down here, if we gave that absolute positioning and then gave it a top position of 0 pixels, then it would put it at the very top of the browser window, not necessarily at the very top of the banner. The way we want it to work with the banner is when we give it a top position of 0, we want it to be aligned at the top of the banner, not at the top of the browser. When we give it a left position of 0, we want it to be aligned to the left side of the banner instead of the browser. So the way we do that is we simply give the banner a position of relative, so that anything inside it with a position of absolute will actually be absolute only in the context of the banner itself. So again, if we give the banner div a class of relative, then any absolutely positioned items inside it will be positioned in relation to the position of the banner itself. So let's jump back into our code and let's illustrate that. Let's say that we wanted all of our text fields to have absolute positioning, and let's say for kicks we wanted to align them in the top left corner. So if we remember, if we go to our HTML page, all of our text fields have a class name that starts with txt. So our headings have it and our paragraphs have it. They all start with txt. So there's a really cool trick we can use in CSS to point to all items that have a class that starts with txt. And the way we do that is we create a new rule, and we're going to use square brackets here. Inside the square brackets, we can point to an attribute, and the attribute we're pointing to here is class. And if we wanted to, we could point to all items that have a class equal to banner, for example. This right here would be the exact same thing as just saying .banner. However, if we use a little trickery here, we can do something a little more complex. So instead of saying equals, I'm going to say caret equals, and the caret is shift 6 on your number row. And if we say class caret equals banner, then it would point to all classes that start with this text here. So instead of banner, I'm going to put txt, and this rule will target any element in our page that has a class name that starts with txt. And what we're going to do for anything that has a class name of txt is we're going to give it absolute positioning. So we're going to set position equal to absolute, and then just temporarily I'm going to set the top and left values to 0. So let's see what that does for us. Let's save our CSS file, jump back into our browser and refresh our page, and you'll see that these items have been put in the top left corner of the browser itself, not in the top left corner of their parent element, which is this div with a class of banner. Another thing I want to go ahead and do before I forget is also want to take the margins off of these items. So we're going to come back over here and just give them a margin of 0 for that same rule, save it and refresh, and now it really is in the upper left hand corner. But again, we want it to be in the upper left hand corner of the banner, not the browser itself. So all we need to do to make that happen is to point to the banner, which is the containing element, and we're going to give it a position of relative. So let's save that, refresh our page, and just by doing that, we've changed the way that absolute positioning works. Now that absolute positioning is in the context of the banner itself. So any top and bottom and left and right values we decide to use will position these elements in the context of the banner itself. So now we can come into this rule here, and I also want to apply this rule. I want to give absolute positioning to the images within our banner as well. And if you remember, if we go back to our HTML page, for our images here, each of these has a class that starts with img. So we can go back to our CSS, and after this class == txt, I'm going to type comma space and do another rule for class =, and then inside quotation marks, img. So any class name that starts with img will also have this rule applied to it. So let's save that, refresh our page, and now everything is in the top left corner of our banner. Now obviously that's not where we want everything to be, but you'll notice now everything has been put in the top left corner of the banner, and all we need to do is resize and move a few elements in order to get them all where they need to be. So now that we understand how that absolute positioning is going to work, in the next video we'll move forward and start positioning and sizing everything how it needs to be for our banner. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you then.